Hockey Inside Out, presented to you by the Gazette.
Welcome to Hockey Inside Out. I'm Gazette sports editor Stu Cowan, joined again today by Chris Knuckles Nilan and Dave Stubbs from the Gazette. I'm happy to say that Chris Nilan is going to be a regular guest with us this year on HIO. Hockey Night in Canada's got Don Cherry. We've got Knuckles. I think we got the better end of the deal.
No question.
Smarter and better dressed, I think, too, Chris.
Well, I would say I am better dressed. I don't dress like a clown.
The Canadians lost to a junior team the other night at the Bell Center, according to Lars Eller's comments. That obviously upset Oilers coach Dallas Eakins. What's your take on him as a coach, Chris?
Well, Dallas Eakins, again, any time a player speaks about another team, you got to be careful what you say. It gets in the newspaper. It gives them more incentive to play against you and try and win the game. And obviously, it gave the Oilers some incentive last night. Dallas Eakins, listen, I know this guy and heard he was a good coach. I know he played well, coached well in the American League. His teams really played for him. He had a lot of success, but I think he's a little bit too GQ-ish for me. And honestly, taking donuts out of the press room is just, you know what I mean? Worry about the team. If guys want to eat donuts, let them eat donuts.
Media doesn't eat donuts, eh?
No.
Not that I've ever seen.
You spoke with Eakins after the game. What was he having to say?
You know what, Stu? Eakins didn't even need to be prompted. He came out and he spoke to the media, and before we even had a chance to ask a question, he said, look, you almost don't need to play a game when a guy gives you this kind of incentive. My take on this whole thing was that this didn't bother the Edmonton Oilers as a group as much as it bothered Dallas Eakins, because when Eller was talking about this being, the Oilers playing like a junior team, I don't think he was trying to insult anyone. I think what he was trying to suggest is that they didn't necessarily have any specific style. They kind of moved around, and it wasn't necessarily a pretty game that they played. But I think that when he said that there was not as much structure as he likes to see, Dallas Eakins took that as a slap in the face. And when he came out to talk to us, I think that if this was a guy whose pride had been stung, and I think this was someone who felt personally insulted. I don't think this was really a knock on the Oilers. I don't think the Oilers really cared too much about it.
He's a rookie coach also.
Yeah.
So he's the heat's on him a little bit. Chris, do you remember any of your teammates ever saying anything that ended up on a bulletin board or reverse somebody on another team?
Not that I recall. I'm sure it happened, but not that I recall right now. I'm sure at some point, Claude, you must have said something, but let's blame Claude. But, it's just something, if you're going to talk down to a team, really, just do it on the ice. Save it for the ice. Talk is cheap. Back it up with what you do on the ice.
Yeah. I had a veteran Hab last night, actually, or he called me the night of the game and got at 12:30 in the morning and basically said, "What the heck did Larry say?" Because I guess he was not plugged in on it. And when he heard what the comments were, he pretty much just said, guys think a lot of things. They have a lot of things going through their mind. Sometimes it's better not to say it. And I think Eller certainly has learned from from what he said. Yeah. I don't know that
we might not get a good quote from him again this season.
Well, that's a bit of the fear too. But I think that Eller understood almost right off the bat that maybe what he said and how it came out was not how he intended it. But you know what? This whole thing, I asked Eakins. I said, "Is there such a thing as a bulletin board anymore that guys will actually pay attention to?"
The digital bulletin board.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's so much stuff. There's so much talking that goes on out there. There's so much white noise now in professional hockey that I think a lot of this stuff kind of goes in one ear and out the other. The thing that was more of a concern to me was how the Habs put their foot on the gas pedal for the first 20 minutes and then just decided to check out for the last two, because that's more the story, I think, the fact that they kind of stunk the joint out the last two periods.
All these comments now. Imagine if Twitter was around when you were playing and all that kind of stuff. Chris, how would you handle that?
I'm so glad it wasn't. I like the idea of, having to pull the car over in a blizzard or a snowstorm, get out in 3 feet of snow, put a quarter in the phone and make the call you have to. I mean, that was so much better to do than, grabbing a phone out of your pocket.
The internet would have melted if you had been on Twitter.
Oh, I can't, I'm so glad when we played it wasn't like that. God, there would have been so many stories out there.
How do you think some of your coaches would have reacted to guys using Twitter? I mean, I know that John Tortorella has kind of come down a little bit on that. Do you think that any of your coaches would have had an issue with Twitter?
Some of the guys that coach me probably wouldn't understand anything about Twitter. But, I'm sure they wouldn't have liked some of the stuff. There's a lot of banter that goes back and forth. There's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of people with false courage because
false
they're
courage
sitting
sitting in their basement.
sitting behind a computer. So yeah, I don't think honestly you would have had to worry about that with me because I did my talking on the ice. I hated talking in the newspaper. I never wanted to give the team any incentive to give us a tough game.
What I find about Twitter is that the guys who are the loudest and the most obnoxious and the most abusive, they get quietest when their mom calls them upstairs for dinner.
Oh yeah.
Or sort of past bedtime.
Get off the couch, Johnny.
7 injured guys. 8 games into the season, 7 injured guys. You ever remember a situation when you were at the Habs that many guys being hurt so early?
I think I'm getting Alzheimer's because I don't remember that either. No, we've had a few. There were a few injuries at times. Guys would be out. I remember Flower was out and Bob Gainey at the same time. Actually, it's when I got called up. And there was injuries here and there, but these are some key guys that are out here, and a lot of guys, and it's going to have an effect on this team. I think they're going to have to take a look at the way they play. They're going to get rid of the high-risk hockey for right now. They're going to really tighten things up, protect the middle of the ice, and if it means playing that old trapping style that Jacques Martin had that nobody likes. They don't want to see this team lose.
These
they want
injuries
them to
have
win.
hit early too, Chris. Right?
Yeah,
Last year, this team was crippled when the injuries hit during the playoffs, and that's really what was a bit of their undoing. But this year, these things have hit early, so you'd like to think that maybe you're going to get some of this stuff out of the way early. But again, you're talking, I think, Chris, you make a good point about the way this team plays, the size of this team, and the way it is structurally built. I mean, for them to be playing the kind of hockey they are now with the game as it is, this could be a very long season, and a lot of guys could be in the clinic for a long time.
They were a bubble team going into the season as far as making the playoffs, and this isn't going to make it any easier. Now it's going to be more of a challenge as more of these players are out. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Hockey Inside Out. We're going to start a new segment this week. We're calling it Nilan's Notebook for now, but if anybody has any other suggestions, I don't know if you like that one, Chris.
That'll probably change at some point.
We'll let Chris sort of go off on something that is bothering him or something he's passionate about in the game today. I think this new helmet rule is something that you've been thinking about.
Yeah, I don't really care for it. Travis Mullen coming off the bench last night in a change, coming to the aid of one of his teammates, and to play who wears a visor. He's going to fight him, and they both said, we'll take our helmets off, and they did. They obliged each other, and the linesman get in and broke up the fight. I don't like it. NHL makes more rules. They change rules, and they're constantly getting into trouble with this stuff, and I just don't like it. I think 2 players want to go, and I understand they're worried about the guys falling down and maybe hitting their head, but you know what? Guys don't want to cut up their hands on those visors. It's very difficult when you get in a fight. You start throwing punches. Next thing you have a huge laceration in your hand, and you don't want to see somebody get hurt, fall on the ice. But how often do guys really fall and hit their head in the ice in a fight? Not very often. I mean, the Paros thing happened. But, I don't like the rule.
It seems to me if 2 guys want to fight and they are consciously going to take their helmets off to fight, I mean, why are the linesmen going to be jumping in to try to protect these guys? They clearly know what they're doing. It's not as though a guy's helmet gets knocked off with a punch that's thrown or something and his helmet gets ripped off. I mean, these are 2 guys. It's like the old Ligue Nord-Americaine hockey. Remember the Verdun Dragons? They play the jungle music, and these guys who put their helmets down and adjust their elbow pads to fight.
Yahoo!
If these guys are going to take their helmets off to fight, then hey, they're going to fight.
I remember there was a story about in that league it was Donald Brashear, and the team won the game and they didn't get in a fight, and the owner was giving him hell saying, "Subban show, Subban show." Going on about that. With I think with the helmet thing, I think it's basically a legal thing. I think the NHL is worried that somebody is going to fall down, hit their head on the ice, and die on the ice. I think they brought that rule in. So if that does happen, the NHL can say, well, we brought the rule in, and then, but if it was to happen, they say, yeah, but you let these guys take off the helmets. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because the fans seem to like fights.
I think the NHL tinkers with the game too much. You know what? Am I old school? Am I a hockey purist from the old days? In a sense, yes, I am. And I think they tinkered with the rules to the extent that now we're seeing the consequences of it, with the concussion issue, with taking the red line out, I think was a thing that really sped up this game, caused more situations where guys can get in violent collisions. don't see 5 guys come up the ice together all the time. Yeah, they tinker with it too much, I think.
Since the start of training camp, there have been more than a dozen suspensions, and I did some arithmetic last night, and the NHL has fined these guys. Now, I think 52 games have been lost with suspensions already this season. Since they started fining guys because of all of this, more than, I think it's $750,000 has been fined these players. They have forfeited that amount of salary. The good thing about that, of course, is that the money goes to the NHL Players Emergency Assistance Fund, which helps former NHLers who are down on their luck and who need a helping hand, perhaps. But, you know, the NHL, I think, it was interesting. Ray Ferraro had a note the other day where he said, look, guys, people are saying, why don't these players get it with these cheap shots, with the boarding and taking guys in the headshots? And he said, don't misunderstand. They do get it, but this is a fast game. It's an emotional game. Sometimes bad decisions are made, and it is now up to the NHL. The onus is on the NHL to hit these guys and hit them hard and to suspend them. If that is going to be the way that you have to send the message, just keep suspending and suspending and suspending again.
The thing is, the game is, Chris is talking about the new rules, the game is so fast now. It's basically, it's football on skates now, right? And there's no out of bounds. You can't go out of bounds. And the helmets haven't really changed a lot from the days.
So you talk to some of the players, right,
So I think
Chris,
the injuries are just going to
You watch the game, Chris, from upstairs, and it seems like it's a slow game. Any of us can be an expert upstairs, and some of the NHL guys who are sitting up there, the healthy scratchers and the guys who are injured, will sit up there and say, I don't like watching a game from up there because I can say, okay, well, he should have done this, he should have done that. But you suddenly move down 7 stories from that press gallery in the Bell Center, and you get to ice level, and you see the speed and the ferocity of that game. And it's not the same game as you see from upstairs. It's not the same game you see on television. TV does hockey a discredit.
Does it look faster to you, Chris?
Yeah, for sure it does. You know, and it is faster overall. And you know, and I say when the red line's out, guys get to gain more speed. They don't come up the ice together. Guys can blow the zone and really get that speed. I like to see the NHL allow the defending players to be able to not so much pick and interfere, but at least get into the path of someone coming down on the puck carrier, get in his way to an extent without hooking him, but being able to give his partner some time to get that puck and protect the defenseman going back to puck for pucks.
Well, Milan Lucic doing that slow dump in the corner, and the defenseman turning and going to get it. You got Milan Lucic breathing down your neck, and you just say nobody to get in his way and
you know,
down a bit.
Used to be able to slow guys down a bit. Now guys just come in full force, top speed, and you know, even though they may glide for about 3 feet before they make the hit, they're still coming fast.
In road hockey, we used to call guys net hangers because they would just always sort of stand up by the net. Now you watch a puck being passed from behind a guy's net up to the other blue line, and you see the speed of that game. I mean, you see the way Andrei Markov can headman that puck. I mean, out of his own, right up to the other blue line. It's a remarkable thing to watch.
Stretch pass.
Yeah, Subban did it the other night with Bork. It was a great pass. It was on a power play. But we're seeing that 5-on-5 now. Guys are stretching out and standing up at the far blue line. It's a long pass out, chip it in the zone, and then they chase it. So, you know, again, I just like the idea of 5 guys coming up the ice together.
PK's always a hot button issue around Montreal. People love him or hate him. What advice do you have for PK as he goes forward?
I love PK Subban. I think he's awesome. He's really elevated his game in the past few years. Obviously, Norris Trophy last year. Great start to this season. I think Nashville took his game away the other night. They really keyed on him. But here's a kid who definitely has leadership qualities. He's a leader on this team. I wish he would just keep his mouth shut, go in the penalty box, not make faces, not try and show up the referees, because they all talk, and it's going to come back to him, it's going to haunt him, it's going to hurt him. If he gets penalties now, just go to the box, keep your mouth shut, and go play the game. He's such an asset for this team. Everybody in this league would take this kid in a heartbeat, and I know we hear this about him, that about him, oh, he's got to do this, got to do that. PK, just go play hockey, be yourself.
Donnie Meehan's got to be licking his chops, right? Sitting here now knowing that he's got to sit down and talk with Marc Bergevin about contract next year. I think that Bergevin's got to lock up Subban sooner than later, and he has to lock him up long term because this guy transcends hockey and he transcends the team. I mean, he is the marketing hook on which, you know, this team hangs a lot of what it's doing now.
He's going to be a very rich man going forward.
Ching, ching.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hockey Inside Out. I just want to special wishes for all the Hockey Inside Out fans coming in for the summit this weekend. Ian Cobb organizing that again this year. I hope you all have a great time, be safe, and have fun. We'll see you next week.